The longest night, Lockerbie, Scotland.
23 million Americans fly across the Atlantic each year. And every time we get on a plane now, we have to wonder, we're simply rolling the dice.
We are out there. We are the targets. We Americans are the targets. And no one will tell us they should have you wear a shirt. I am an American. Kill me.
It's always there in the back of your mind, isn't it? Good evening. I'm Connie Chung. If you fly, and most of us do, there's always that fear. But nothing brought home the fear of terrorism in the skies quite like the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 last Christmas over Lockerbie, Scotland. 270 people were killed. Tonight, we go inside the world's biggest murder investigation. And for the first time, the man in charge of that investigation reveals in detail what his detectives think happened. We're going to reconstruct for you his leading theories on how the bomb could have been planted on board the plane. But for all that complicated detective work, our story begins, simply enough, with a radio.
This is the radio, and this is the bomb. It looks just like a radio, and it worked like a radio. This bomb can play music. It's a very cost-effective way of destroying a lot of lives.
This is the greatest mass murder of modern times in Scotland, and it is an enormous tragedy. We are dedicated to one single task in Scotland at the moment. That is the identification of those responsible for this mass murder.
My daughter was sitting in seat 29A. My daughter should be home. It has changed. It has changed our dreams. It has changed how I view everything, and I know it can happen again.
I lost the closest friends I had in Lockerbie. And I don't really think, for the people of Lockerbie, life can never be normal again.
We've got the biggest international murder hunt in history, all caused by terrorists, and all caused by one quite small detonator. Now I'm going to take this apart now and show you what the bomb that blew up the Pan Am Flight 103 must have looked like. First of all, the main explosive that's going to do the damage to the plane, a commercial explosive called Semtex. This has been distributed pretty widely throughout the terrorist organization in Europe, certainly, and it is used by terrorists because it's convenient, it's powerful and deadly. Now, the detonator is the key of the explosive lock, the smallest, the most deadly part of the whole thing, and relatively easy to get hold of by terrorists. That's what sets it off. Okay, fine.
If anyone had told me in the shock and the aftermath of the 21st of December that we would be able to identify as much as we have, that we would physically locate and retrieve from these hundreds of square miles of Scotland the items that we have, I would frankly have been sceptical.
Advance again!
It meant searching by hand hundreds of square miles. The searching is still going on.
Okay, hold!
And it was possible to establish very clearly that it was indeed a bomb that had taken out this aircraft, that indeed it was a bomb contained within a cassette recorder.
Precisely such a cassette recorder was described in an FAA security warning obtained by CBS News. The warning was issued 5 weeks before Pan Am 103 would be blown apart. It described in detail the arrest of a terrorist group operating in Germany and the seizure by German police of a cache of explosives, including a radio bomb built to pass undetected through airports. 1 month before the bombing of Pan Am 103, the airlines, the State Department, and the embassies all got the fatal warning, but the general flying public did not.
If we were to make public all of these threats, we would paralyze not only air traffic, but we would paralyze diplomatic missions, we'd paralyze American business. We simply cannot be in a circumstance where we are giving in to the terrorists by making public every single threat we get. To do that is to allow a terrorist with a quarter to go make a phone call and say, I'm going to blow X flight out of the sky tonight, and then we make it public, and he's achieved his purpose.
Who do you think masterminded the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103?
We had a group of radical Palestinians who'd been arrested by the Germans. And that's a group which has attacked American targets before, including in Germany last year. It's a group which has its headquarters in Damascus, gets its money from the Libyans, and has had conversations with the Iranians about conducting attacks. So that's an awfully good suspect.
The group within the terrorist organization that have to get the bomb on the aircraft could have duped somebody into carrying it aboard as either a gift to themselves where they would pack it in their own baggage, or as a package that was to be carried to some relative or somebody in New York.
By a careful examination of what had happened to the fuselage of the aircraft, and then by the most meticulous, painstaking searching of the ground, looking for small fragments, we have now identified also the type of the piece of baggage within which the bomb was contained.
You could either have a hypothesis that the dupe was completely naive, completely unwitting, someone who was persuaded to take a bag on with no suspicion, or the person was involved in something illegal, like drug smuggling, and thought that he or she was smuggling drugs, but in fact was carrying aboard the bomb. Either hypothesis is possible.
It was winter solstice, the longest night of the year. What you are about to see are scenes we created, based on information that's been shared with us by the Scottish Police and Scotland Yard, a reconstruction of the investigators' own theories.
Let's take the case of naive dupe. There were a number of young women who had friends in the Arab communities, either in Frankfurt or elsewhere, where we were concerned that perhaps an Arab friend of theirs had persuaded them unwittingly to carry this bomb on board.
Doesn't it seem ridiculous in today's age of terrorism that someone would be so naive to take a suitcase on board a plane that didn't belong to him or her?
It seems to me extremely naive, but I guess there are people who are that naive.
Ticket, please. Flight number?
103 Pan Am.
When you arrive at the airport, you are asked, did you pack this suitcase? Are you carrying any gifts or anybody else? Has the bag been under your observation the entire time? So you hope you catch that kind of a problem with those kinds of questions.
What was the purpose of your visit?
Well, I'm studying here. I'm going home for Christmas.
These are your bags?
Well, the backpack is my stuff.
Wir haben eine halbe Stunde, können was zu essen holen.
The suitcase I'm taking for my boyfriend's uncle. He's meeting me at Kennedy.
You know, of course, what's inside.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. You can proceed to the ticket window. Papiere, bitte.
The other possibility was a fellow who was suspected of being involved in drug running, who was on the plane and who was killed on the plane. It is possible, because of his contacts in the drug world and in the Arab world, that he might have unwittingly carried the suitcase aboard, presumably thinking it was drugs, and in fact it wasn't drugs, it was a bomb.
Security advice. Do not leave your baggage unattended.
And your passport?
Here.
You are an American citizen? Excuse me?
Yes.
What was the purpose of your visit?
Pleasure visiting my friends.
Is this your bag?
Mm-hmm.
Have you been given any gifts? Are you carrying any electrical devices?
Just my radio, man.
Thank you. You can proceed to the window now. Over here, over here.
The security people did know about the threats. All of the airline security officials, including Pan American, received the November 17th alert.
Then
They
why
all
wasn't
had
it detected?
Because you didn't have a hand search of every single bag. That was not required.
Bags to check.
I would also add that a hand search probably would not have found this bomb. That it was so cleverly mounted in the radio that it is unlikely that even if you had found the radio, you would have determined that it was a bomb.
Christmas present. Here's your baggage claim and your boarding papers. Your gate is B46, 450 departure. Try to be there at least 15 minutes in advance.
Thanks. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
At the Pan Am ticket counter, some bags were marked for later X-ray, but those belonging to American citizens usually were not.
They have X-ray screening, but the wires and the circuitry of the bomb are camouflaged by the wires and circuitry of the radio. And it's only if he had a radio of similar sort being displayed at the same time as his radio bomb would he see that there was a difference.
Nach Hamburg wird zum Ausgang A15 gebeten. Frau Jansson, bitte.
Why didn't they care enough to say, we received a high-level warning on this flight. Let's cancel the flight. Let's search the flight. How could they have let these people board the plane and not have checked those 2 weeks before Christmas?
Security advice. Do not leave your baggage unattended.
How could they have done this to so many children that don't have fathers any longer? Who would want this on their conscience?
Attention passengers, Pan Am Flight 103 to London and continuing on to New York is ready to board. At this time, I would like those passengers with small children and passengers seated in rows 25 through 40 to please board.
Lassen Sie Ihr Gepäck nicht unbeaufsichtigt. Security advice. Do not leave your baggage unattended.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thanks. So you're headed for...
Paris.
Paris.
Pan Am Flight 103 is now ready for boarding.
It was late afternoon, and by the time Pan Am 103 left Frankfurt for London, it was literally a ticking time bomb. 197 more passengers boarded in London, mostly Americans headed home for Christmas. But what the U.S. government decided not to tell them was that there was more than one FAA security bulletin warning of a bomb threat. There were several, and taken together, they read like a blueprint for mass murder. The 727 that left Germany arrived at London's Heathrow Airport at 5 p.m. About 70 pieces of the Frankfurt baggage were then transferred into a New York-bound 747 Jumbo, into the forward cargo hold just underneath the first-class seats. The Semtex bomb would be placed in that cargo hold too, ready to explode right next to the plane's vital electronic control center.
It would be like shooting a person in the head if the bomb went off when it was placed in a vital point, either on the hydraulics or on the electronic control panel, just like shooting a man through the head.
Our daughter was a high school exchange student in Exeter, England.
The first American girl.
First American girl to make that exchange. She was there for a semester and she was returning home.
How are you? This is England. This is my street. And I'm having a lot of fun here. It's hard work. It's been really tough, but it's worth it.
She was very beautiful, and she was also a very tough kind of girl that was in competitive athletics from the age of 5. A girl who started ballet training at the age of 6.
The kind of girl that you would say, God, there's nothing she can't do. And she's good. And she's good.
It appears now there were many warnings issued by our government to the airlines, to the airports, to all our security agencies, that a bombing was to take place, that it was to take place in Frankfurt in the 2 weeks or so before Christmas, and the plane would be a Pan Am plane bound for the United States. 5 written official warnings of a terrorist bombing attack. Apparently some received by government officials who acted on them to cancel their reservations, while the general public was not in the loop of getting the warnings.